Again and again and again. Well, this is getting ridiculously unreal. With every anticipated Malayalam movie exceeding expectations, it seems the year-end list for the best 2021 Indian films will be an all-Malayalam show. And each of these films are as different as they can be, from the mystical world of Churuli to the familiar domestic territory of the great Indian kitchen, or the metaphorical universe of Kala. The palette of human emotions that the Malayalam movie industry have in display this year serves to be diversity of our living, the beauty of the often beastly human existence. And talking about human emotions, the film we choose to discuss today might be a perfect case study. An amazing panorama of rage, guilt, vengeance, shock, and forgiveness. Kaanekkaane, written by Bobby and Sanjay and directed by Manu Ashokan, is a remarkable film of blended genres based on great performances by a Myanaadhi pair of Tovino and Aishwarya Lekshmi, and an extraordinary Suraj Venjaramoodu. Kaanekkaane, as the name suggests, thrives on your experience of rewatching and discovering things for yourself. So we won't go into the details of the plot much, and instead discuss on the themes of the film, keeping it as much spoiler-free as possible. It might be best if you watch the film first. Before moving on, once again requesting for your support through shares and subscriptions, so that all the exciting plans that we have in store for Malayalam cinema and cinema overall can be worked on with further motivation. Thank you for supporting us this far. Kaanekkaane starts with the credits appearing over a blood-stained white sheet, wrapping up a body that is not exposed to the audience. Much like this motif, Kaanekkaane is a film that does not spell out things to its audience and trusts them to join the dots. It is also a narrative that is marked with similar blooded wounds of its multiple characters. And it's to be found out whether the red blood overrides the white background. This multiple layer at play is also the fulcrum on which the sensitive plot sits. There are layers of duality for all major characters, emphasizing on the multiple minds that reside within the same body. A husband who is loving to his wife and cheating on her in matter of minutes. A wife seemingly happy, composed and cordial, going through serious depression inside. And fathers who are otherwise the most amiable people, suddenly becoming nemesis to the individuals who might affect their children. The duality of the characteristics is coupled with the duality of time frames, as the film constantly toggles between past and the present. And as we see the past selves of the characters, we gradually get into their present crisis and start realizing the complexity of the plot and the human mind. Tovino Thomas's Alan, seen in the flashback scenes, advocates for him to be a flawed human and not a villain, as we are otherwise habituated in watching movies with similar premise. Suraj Venjaramoodu's image as the caring father gets established more in the nonchalant flashback than in the vindictive present. And in one flashback scene of Aishwarya Lekshmi, you realize how time changes our wishes, experiences, and life overall. What you wanted in the past becomes the burden of the present, and the burden of the present can only be relieved by the fond memories of the past. The circular narrative through flashbacks in Kaanekkaane is a case in philosophy that few films achieve so effortlessly. Fathers and their protective relationship with the children were a subtext in the celebrated limited series Mayor of Easttown, a series which, like this film, used a thriller setup to talk about human emotions. Kaanekkaane has a similar arc, which starts in revenge and ends in redemption, though it's more suited to Indian sensibilities. It is so interesting to find that our films these days overlap so closely with the best works done across the world, and yet maintain the rooted local feel. Malayalam cinema in particular is keeping on doing this with every new film. Think about the characters the big stars of the industry played this year. Fahad in Joji or Malik, Prithviraj in Kuruthi, Mohanlal in Drishyam 2, or Tovino Thomas in Kala or Kaanekkaane. Almost every time the stars are on the screen, they represent flawed characters, and thus our society in real, which is a tremendous feat. The always black and mostly caricaturist villains we used to have before kind of blurred our social consciousness, making us feel that the everyday, normal looking and pleasantly talking individuals in real life can never be flawed, as we were used to an image of differently looking and sounding flawed characters. A film like Kaanekkaane thus informs and elevates our social consciousness as well, reminding us to watch and discover for ourselves bereft of the popular assumptions. We have so many films about the choice between what is right and what is wrong. And here's a film which brings in a new prism to the act of doing wrong itself, and how situations and baggage from the past makes even right people take wrong decisions, which eventually change their lives. Again, a more mature representation of our society and the idiosyncrasies of humanity. The background music of Kaanekkaane deserves a special mention. It isn't subtle and mostly underlines the happenings on the screen, and yet so perfectly composed that it works beautifully. A lot of things that the script and dialogues do not produce is done by the background score, but not at the cost of imposing. There's this scene in the cemetery where Aishwarya Lekshmi's Sneha lies to Suraj Venjaramoodu's Paul, and minutes Paul realizes it. And then there's this striking score which instantly elevates the tension of the scene. There's so many similar instances across the film. Lastly, coming to the performances, well, what do we say? Aishwarya and Tovino both had difficult roles to play, which they justify very well. Admirers of Myanaadhi might be in want of more chemistry between the two, but that was a completely different film. And that we are not affected much by the Ashikabu film from the onset here speaks about how good and fresh the actors felt in Kaanekkaane. But it is Suraj Venjaramoodu as Deputy Tahsildar Paul who steals the show from start to the end. The man mesmerized earlier this year with The Great Indian Kitchen, and now in this movie he exhibits his range further. Just look out for him in the scene where he meets his grandson after long and unsure whether he will hug him up front or hold back to understand if he still remembers him. Look at the eyes. Every time he reminds his grandson about his daughter, look at him when he realizes for the first time that he had been lied to all along. These scenes exhibit different emotions, and Suraj hardly moves his facial nerves to bring that out. It's in his eyes, the body posture, or the tonality of his voice that the emotions come out, giving us a perfect understanding of what might be playing in his mind. It's absolutely brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. One of the finest performances of the year, and you can watch Kaanekkaane over and over again for Suraj Venjaramoodu alone. The climax of the film that brings things full circle might be somewhat contrived, although it works in the favor of its philosophy. It's good but not great as the otherwise subtle texture of the film. But then, what is life about? Uneven, often surprising, and always changing. That happens to be the philosophy of the story. Perhaps the climax works at a meta level that way. That is all from us today. Let us know what you feel about our analysis of Kaanekkaane in the comment section, and let us know which are the films you want us to review. We better start looking for new words, adjectives and phrases to describe the next Malayalam film coming our way. It's almost certain now that it will overwhelm us.